Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the I Love Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Woolwine, and our first guest of 2026 is the one and only boy wonder, Kid Lat. How we doing, my friend?
I'm great. I'm glad to be on here. It's an honor to
Thank
be on the I Love Wrestling podcast. I'm really excited.
I appreciate it. We had your tag partner on here, and I
Yes.
think it only makes sense to get the other half of Thunder and Lightning on here. And what a way to start off 2026 with a little bit of fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
Before we dive into your career fandom, what maybe we can expect out of 26, would you like to let the fans know where they can check you out social media wise and even any upcoming events you have coming up?
Yeah. As far as social media goes, I'm Kid Lat and Boy Wonder on both TikTok and Instagram. That's an underscore after every word there. I'm a big underscore guy for handles. And then Facebook, also Kid Lat Boy Wonder page, but mainly you could find me at Joe Win. As far as events coming up for the year, uh, I've had my calendar pretty well organized going into 26. So a lot of places you can find me consistently throughout the year. Places like Frontline Pro out in Central Wisconsin, ARW down in Indiana, of course, home promotions like Wrestle League and All Star Lucha Libre. You can find me there, and then shows for Fantastic League of Wrestling throughout the year as well. So places like that, as well as others, but those are mainly the places you'll find me month to month. So,
Perfect. Seems like you got a busy base
yeah,
of places you go to.
for sure.
Here on the I Love Wrestling podcast, I try to start the same place with everybody, and as wrestlers, as podcasters, as I mean, pretty much anybody around or in the business, you have to love this, and we all have a story of when we found it and when we fell in love with it. So, Kid Lat, when did you find professional wrestling, and what about this sport made you fall in love with it?
Yeah, so I mean, my dad was always a big wrestling fan, and when I was a younger child, I'd always just be queuing in to watch whatever he's watching. And I remember specifically, it was either in 2011 or 2012. I was on me and my parents as well as my siblings were on a trip to Washington D.C. and we were just chilling at the hotel, and we turned on WWE for the first time, and there was a match between Team Hell No, Daniel Bryan and Kane versus Sheamus and Punk when they were both world champions. So that was like my first view of wrestling from a TV stance, and I mean, obviously, I just fell in love with it there. And I was, I'm a, I was born in 2005, so all the media I've consumed are all really 2010s ish, and then so I was just really into the 2010s Raw and SmackDown era, and that's sort of what I grew up on. So I was always big on guys like Daniel Bryan and Rey Mysterio are always more of my speed. So.
And I mean, I know you speak of Daniel Bryan and Ray. Did you have any more favorites? And if so, which one of those would you take most inspiration from when you'd go to actually start training?
Yeah, I mean, so um getting into sorry, my camera's real choppy here. Sorry. um Other favorites, especially in the recent years, I've really taken a lot of underdog babyface sort of archetypal guys or what I gravitate towards. So in more recent years, guys like Sammy um, are some of my favorite guys. Gargano during the Black and Gold run. Um, but in terms of who I sort of take bits and pieces from, probably the biggest inspiration or both character stuff and then what I do in the ring is definitely Ray. Just a sort of fusion of American and lucha styles is what I like to take from guys like that.
Okay. So growing up, especially when you'd get into like your teenage years? Was the plan for you always to say, "Hey, I want to pursue wrestling," or was there other avenues that you thought about going first?
Well, um, as a kid, you love wrestling, and a lot of kids will always say like, "Oh, I want to grow up and be a wrestler." Like, yeah, that's definitely how I was as well. But eventually, you grow up and you get to school and you start finding other interests. And honestly, um, approaching like at the start of you know probably seventh grade is where I sort of like stopped watching wrestling for a little bit, honestly, and then started to explore other interests. Um, and wrestling really wasn't in my mind for a couple years until the pandemic hit. Is actually where the interest sparked again because I just stumbled upon some old clips, which eventually snowballed into me and my dad watching AEW around the 2020s, and then yeah, it's from there that my interest sort of re-sparked, and then I started training in 21, and then sort of just never looked back from there. Once I started doing the actual stuff in the ring, a love for it grew, and I sort of never looked back.
So, like, obviously, usually there's something that sparks the, "Hey, I'm a fan of this, now I wanna train." Was there a moment, like a specific moment, or a series of moments that made you decide, "Okay, I'm gonna take this jump?"
It was it was more so that during that time I wasn't really doing anything else, and I sort of just wanted to try it at first. Um, Again, pandemic hits, world sort of stops, comes to a halt, and I started looking at clips. I remember like the first thing I stumbled upon, uh, really what it was I started remembering my old WWE 2K14 universe, and I remember
Mm.
that back then I put my belt on Kofi, and I was like, "Hey, what's Kofi Kingston up to?" And this is a year or two removed from Mania 35 now, so I look to see what's going on with Kofi Kingston, and I see the Kofi Mania stuff. It's like, wow, that's really cool, and that sort of snowballed into me watching more stuff. The decision to become a wrestler and train, that initial decision was on a whim, but for me to really fall in love with it is really when I started to get in there and learn more about the business and all the intricacies of that.
How did you go about finding the right, training facility for yourself?
I When I made the decision to try to start to train, I was sort of just doing deep dives on Reddit threads and Google of like places in my area. I'm from Chicago, so there's obviously no shortage of schools here.
No.
Yeah, great area for that. And so I stumbled upon a Wrestle League LLC. Um, and honestly, what it came down to is they just had really good Google reviews. And then so I just started. I shot them an email of like, hey, because I was still rather young at the time. Like, hey, what's the oldest I have to be to do this? And I got an email, very timely email back right away, and they were like, hey, actually, we're gonna start doing a youth program pretty soon. So I hopped on that, and that's where it all started there on that side of the ball.
What were some of the biggest things you struggled with during training? And then what were some of the things that maybe came easier to you?
Um, Starting with, I guess, sort of the strengths, I was always a somewhat athletic kid. I was a big track and distance runner in high school, so I was always a big cardio guy. So a lot of like stuff like drills, blow up drills, stuff like that. I never really had a problem with. I was a very conditioned kid. I wasn't the biggest, so I mean, and I'm still not. So I mean, I'm putting on mass like that. That's one thing, but the actual movement and stuff, I took to pretty well. Um, when the time came to actually start working, the sort of getting a grasp on ring psychology and match structure is really where I had to start to really apply myself. But I find myself lucky because the people, my trainers at Wrestle League, mainly shouting out guys like Quinn Whittick and Shogun Chris Logan, are very well known for that grasp on those that side of the business. So I was lucky enough to sit behind some really good teachers on that end to really ease me into that process.
How long into your training process before the conversation started for you to debut, and then how long before you actually made your debut?
Yeah, so uh, as I've stated before, I started rather young, really. So I the conversation for me to even start training started when I was 15. Started training going into 16, was 16 years old. So Wrestle League was kind of, a little wary of me having my first match too early. But eventually the talk started when I was about like a good year into training. So it took me like a little bit, mainly because of the age factor. And then I debuted in March of 2022. So yeah, that's where it started there.
What was going through your mind going into the match, and what was going in your mind after the match?
Yeah, I mean everyone is nervous their first time out there. I certainly was. However, I was once again put into a rather fortunate position with my first match. As a really, it was more so, as many people's first match are, it was very much a squash match. So I knew what I had to do in there, but obviously everybody's nervous. So, I remember going out there behind the curtain, sort of freaking out, but it was Shogun Chris Logan, my head trainer, who sort of calmed me down. It's like, hey, you've been working towards this for a while, and you're ready, and it was a simple match layout, and we did what we had to do, and I was very lucky to be put in that position.
What did it mean personally for you to be able to have him be your first opponent?
Um, oh, actually, well, he wasn't. He was just at the curtain at the time. He wasn't my
Okay.
first opponent. My first opponent was this guy named EJ Swanson, who was with
Okay.
Wrestle League. Um, but him being there meant a lot to me because uh, well, she transitioned recently. Um, Shogun. She was there since my first days of training. So having her be the one to sort of calm me down before I went out there meant a lot to me.
Definitely. So where I came across yourself and your now current tag team partner Adonis was through Frontline Pro.
Right.
Actually, I had Steve Arndt on here not too long ago, and started diving deep into the Frontline Pro um, history book, so to speak. How did you end up getting your foot in the door there? And kind of like, what was your experience like trying to branch out from Wrestle League?
With Frontline, specifically Frontline, which has become sort of a second home for me. I have a very good relationship with Ben McCoy, the owner and promoter. Um, Quinn Whittick, who is another man who was instrumental in my development and my training, who's also the guy in JCW behind the cocaine gimmick.
Mm,
Um, in my first couple years of really like getting outside bookings and like making the miles and going out there, a lot of the places were places that Quinn Whittick had already, you know, uh, dipped his toes in the water and made an impact, so he could. It was a easier transition for guys that worked under him to sort of come up. So I was already being looked at by Ben through Quinn. So I remember I was on a senior high school band trip. For it was a school trip, and we were on the bus, and we were getting out at a rest stop, and I remember getting a call from Ben McCoy on Facebook, and it was right before their biggest event yearly, which is known as Honor Bound. They're doing this big battle royal, and he was like, "Hey, uh, been looking at you for a long time through Quinn. He put in a really good word for you. Come out here to Honor Bound this date and for Battle Royal, and then we'll see where it goes from there." And I was just lucky enough to stick around, and Frontline Pro is once again become a second home for me, and I absolutely love being there. And I think I've done some of my proudest work throughout my career at Frontline Pro.
So, like, obviously, I feel like a lot of people know like the thunder and lightning dynamic. But whose idea was it to put you guys together and to form that group?
Um, so we started tagging at Wrestle League,
Mm.
really. Uh, but in terms of whose idea it was, I don't think it really was really a promoter's idea. When I started training at Wrestle League, and I mentioned we had this thing youth program, which honestly um, did not last too long, simply because of the fact that when I started, there were other younger individuals who also were in it with me, but none of them really stuck around for the program. A lot of kids would end up, they'd start training and eventually they drop out. But Adonis Allen was one of the only ones that really stay. So we were always good friends back when we were in our early training days, and we always sort of wanted to do the tag thing. And eventually we both graduated high school and we got to college, and we started being roommates at DePaul University. So we'd spend even more time with each other, and we're like, all right, it's time for to give Thunder and Lightning a try. And then Wrestle League did it, and you know it started working well there. Eventually, when we got to Frontline Pro, I was doing a program with another tag partner of mine, Josh Price, which eventually he'd go on to have a singles run, which left me free. And Ben McCoy was like, "Hey, let's try the Thunder and Lightning thing there." So
What's it been like for you guys to not only work together and even become tag team champions together, but to see each other grow, um, relatively at the same time?
yeah, I mean, I can't obviously can't speak for his perspective, but on my end, witnessing the growth of Adonis Allen is definitely something to see. I have I started about a year before he did for training. Um, so honestly, like seeing his growth really impresses me because, like, from my perspective, he's done a lot on a pretty rapid pace. Honestly, we both haven't been in this for too long, and we're still rather young. And being able to travel to different promotions, get myself out there at the same time, seeing him get himself out there is very impressive, and it makes me proud.
So, like, something I meant to touch on earlier. You talked a little bit about working with a couple lucha libre promotions, and obviously, I mean, growing up a fan of like Rey Mysterio, is that something when you got into wrestling that like gravitated you towards that style? And how's it been for you to adapt to that style?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always, been a more of a fan of the more high flying guys, especially lucha guys. I was a big fan of like Kalisto when he came in. I just had a seminar with Kalisto Friday, which was pretty cool. Uh, so I've touched about my training background on the American side of things, but what's equally as important to my career is I've also gone through a couple years now of lucha libre training with Atomico at the school of lucha libre at All Star, and Skida when he used to come in um, for the school as well. So about a year after I had debuted and worked American style wrestling, for places like Wrestle League and Frontline. Um, I was contacted by a promoter, also a good friend of mine, John Bullard, who was well known for really expanding his brand to a more international scale, and he likes to bring in guys from outside the country and even workers inside the country who specialize in more foreign styles. And it was through him where he and All Star Lucha brought in Skyda for a seminar, which I eventually went to. Um, and then I started going to All Star regularly twice a week after that, and started just developing my style on the lucha end of things. And since then, it's been a great gateway to other opportunities. A lot of uh, my consistent bookings have been through lucha avenues, lucha connections. So
I see. So, like, what would you say is the biggest difference between working a lucha style as opposed to a more traditional American style?
yeah, mainly I think it's a lot of people go to the moves. Obviously, lucha has a bigger importance on the grandioseness of what you're seeing acrobatically, but also it's what I had to adjust to mostly was the structural difference. The structural differences of matches in lucha and American are vastly different. There's stuff there's aspects of psychology that they value differently. And I think there's also a misconception with lucha that they have a sort of a less importance on psychology, but I don't think that's also necessarily true. I just think it's a different sort of structure, but it's rather distinct, and it did take some getting used to. Also, obviously, um, the side note that a lot of workers who've wrestled both styles note, and that's the uh, the difference of sort of working sides, like in a chaining in American, a lot you're working the left side a lot. You know, a lot of wrist locks to the left arm, hammer locks, or grabbing the left arm. With lucha, it's very the right side is utilized also a lot more. So when I was first starting, there was a lot of twists and turns during the chaining that you have to really pay attention to because it's really it's all fair game instead of sort of a simple layout that American really has. So
What's it been like for you to try to mix or clash those styles?
it's all about um, taking the bits and pieces and applying it. When I'll work workers who mainly work American and really don't have much experience in lucha, I'm still able to perform like moves that I would in lucha matches as long as it's recontextualized in like an American style, you know. Um, a lot of the stuff that I do consistently in the ring now come from things I've learned from lucha training, but also sort of combined and placed in parts of matches that are using like American match psychology. So,
Something I found rather interesting when doing research on your career so far is that you've been able to travel to Canada to work. And there's a lot of guys, I mean, that's been in there doing this for years who've yet to leave the States. What was your experience like being able to go up there and work? And what are maybe some other places that you'd like to work in the future, whether it's in, Canada or even further abroad?
Canada was a great experience. Shout out Rion Skills and Rob Stardom, who were really the two individuals that um, gave me that opportunity and sort of lined it up for me and everyone else who went. It was cool. It was interesting to see the differences of being up there, but also how a lot of it. is not that different. I was in Manitoba, which um, is very like, to for lack of a better term, Midwesty. Honestly, it reminded me a lot of like like Wisconsin and Minnesota. Honestly, but
Okay.
it was still cool. We got to check out like a Tim Hortons, which I've never been, which was pretty cool. Um, it was a wonderful opportunity nonetheless, and that was my first ever abroad opportunity. So that was very cool. Had a good outing there. In terms of other places, obviously places like Japan and Mexico would be really cool. Um, maybe wrestling or not, I'd love to maybe circle back. My mom's side of the family is from Iloilo, Philippines, and
Hmm.
maybe eventually I'd like to check that out too. But well, whether that's in a wrestling context or not, but I mean, there's countless places around the world I'd love to check out. I recently we had British wrestler Tommy Gunn come to the United States for his tour for Fantastic League Wrestling, and for training, he'd come by All Star Lucha Libre twice a week for an entire summer, which was a great opportunity to learn from him and his sort of world of sports style, which is very unique and had a lot of differences. And I had the opportunity to work him at a show for the uh, Illinois, the ILWF, which was a cool match to have as well. But yeah, I mean, so maybe places like the UK eventually too would be really a cool opportunity.
I like it. Have you had any conversations about like going back to Canada or even going somewhere else?
Um, I can't say too much right now,
Okay.
but I may or may not have had talks about certain overseas opportunities coming up in 2026. Again, I can't. My hands are kind of tied on that right now, but
Okay.
yeah.
I like it. I like the idea, the mystique, I guess we could say in this situation. I like it. Um, so something I guess I maybe just thought of off the top of my head. How is the Kid Lat character perceived in somewhere like Canada?
Um, well, with the Canada opportunity specifically, it was sort of in a format. It was like in a festival, so it was sort of like a fair show kind of format where
Okay,
we do one set of matches, give the festival sort of time to have the people go out and experience that, and then they come back. So in that sense, it was pretty easy for me to sort of establish a crowd connection because I just had so much time with them
definitely.
on that day. Uh, but in terms of differences from the U.S., honestly, I didn't see anything too distinct. Like it didn't really feel uh uniquely foreign, I guess, for a better word. I think it's still the superhero character is sort of a universal thing. Like people see a cape and a mask and they're like, oh, that's a
It
superhero. So I
instantly
don't.
makes sense.
Right, there wasn't too much of a difference there. It wasn't really a hurdle I had to climb over there. uh, so it was uh, rather the same.
Okay. You might have already answered this question, but just to dive a little bit deeper into it, I'm just really curious. I'm a big fan of Juggalo Championship Wrestling. Did that opportunity come through Quinn, or was it another route that helped you get that opportunity to work with them?
No, yeah, it was absolutely through Quinlidick. Yeah, for
Yeah, okay.
sure. He he got me and my good friend Disco Ray opportunities there for the day, and well, for 2 days, and that was a great opportunity, and I would have never expected a year ago to have been in that situation. And that's definitely one of the moments of this year that I cherish the most, being able to work guys like the Wraith and Caleb Conley, who, again, I never really thought I would be in that position a year ago. So.
So, like, kind of, some people might have a misconception of what the Juggalo community looks like. What was your like? experience being around those guys? Because I've had some guys on here like Tarzan Duran, and I've had Pondo and Too Tough Tony, who are all associated with Juggalo Championship Wrestling, and they always speak very highly of not only the promotion but the community. What was your experience like being around those guys?
Yeah, I mean, the locker room definitely of JCW was, I mean, they were all extremely accommodating and welcoming to the new guys, and um, the fans as well were, you know, also very kind. I honestly didn't know too much about Juggalo culture before Quinn Whittick and Stephen Flo and those guys sort of really got into JCW. So that was sort of my first taste of it as well. And I hadn't really like known too much about their reputation either. So I was sort of just going into it blind. But from my experience, yeah, I mean, I mean, it was a rowdy crowd for sure. They're very passionate about ICP and JCW, but also, they're equally as accommodating and nice and grateful for those who perform for them for JCW. So
I like it. So something I feel like I guess I should have asked about earlier. Where did the idea for the name persona of Kid Lat come from?
when I for the name Kid Lat, this is an interesting talking point because I do find myself explaining it more often than I think well chosen wrestling names should be have to explain. Uh, it's definitely a complicated one because when you hear lat, most people think like maybe like latissimus dorsi muscle, stuff like that, lateral. Some people thought it meant like Latin or something. But the word Kid Lat together as a word, no space in the middle, means lightning bolt in Tagalog, which is the Filipino dialect. Again, my mom's from the Philippines, so it was sort of a nod to that. My uncle came up with it, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, you're 16 and you're Filipino. You're Kid Lat, you put a space in the middle." It's like, "Oh, that's really good. That's a good idea." So I started rolling with that. Um, when I first debuted for Wrestle League, I didn't really have a character. It certainly wasn't really a superhero persona. I was just sort of like a young kid that wore like a Karate Kid headband, I guess is the best way to describe that. But it's actually when I first started working for Frontline, where Ben McCoy really had the idea of, hey, let's try a sort of a superhero gimmick thing out, and he sort of just left me to sort of figure it out. And I found this guy who made masks on Etsy. Actually, is where my very early like foam mask, as you could see there, is was from, and um, so I said that to him. It's like, hey, would something like this work? And it's like, yeah, we'll try it out. And we started doing the superhero thing, and that really took a while for me to grow into it. It started, you know, a superhero gimmick is it's a really distinct, obvious sort of character. It's that's sort of a thing where you can really spoon feed the idea of a superhero to an audience, and they'll understand. As we said, they see a cape, and they see the mask, and they're okay. That's a superhero. One thing I struggled on early with the gimmick was to figure out how to keep the character consistent from outside to inside to the ring, because I felt like I had a good grasp on how to be a superhero for promos and stuff like that. But when I got in there, how could I stay a superhero and not just revert back to being a wrestler? But I studied tape of guys like the Hurricane, obviously, and the Super Z out in OVW, and see what they did to sort of keep the superhero thing going. And I came up with some of my own stuff on my own. And I started like when I went for stuff for like cross bodies, I do like a little superhero pose when I went, and started doing that head scissors thing where I keep the superhero. It's a lot of posing, really, is what it is. But yeah, I sort of tried to find avenues to not lose the character once the bell rang. And uh, I guess really what I'm trying to say is that idea really came because of Frontline, which is also another reason why I've been at Frontline and stayed there consistently for this long. And it sort of became a second home for me because I sort of owe that side of myself to Ben McCoy and Frontline.
I like it. I like it a lot. Um, can you try to break down the origin, or do you know the origin of the character Kid Lat?
I think characters like Kid Lat are sort of the way that the Joker is for DC. I think the origin itself is best left to the
Okay.
viewer. Obviously, wrestlers, independent workers, we work a lot of different promotions, and there's a lot of different storylines going on, and sometimes your character has aspects to itself over here, but then in a promotion not too many miles away, it's completely different. You're in a completely different scenario. Um, I think the Kid Lat of Frontline Pro is not the same Kid Lat of Rocket Pro Wrestling and Wrestle League, and so I think it's almost best to think of leave the origin up to the viewer there. Keep it sort of a mystery. For the sake of mystique, but also for the sake of we don't want to crazy crossing lines, and then when people get confused and stuff. So
I like it. Something I guess natural progression. Everybody evolves. What is the evolution of Kid Lat? Like, what happens when Kid Lat is no longer a kid no more?
right, yeah. I mean, I think that's also another thing I love about being the character is that there's definitely a lot of room for growth.
Yes.
There's you watch superhero movies and there's obvious plot lines of you know what happens when this superhero you know loses his identity, stuff like that. Where would Kid Lat be if he for say couldn't wear the mask anymore? There's a lot of interesting scenarios that the superhero character could go down to really a lot of places I've worked have I out in Rocket Pro, out in Joliet, I worked a program with Damian Gray, and he did the whole angle of oh you have this happy go lucky superhero, let's try and like darken the heart and bring him to the dark side. We did this like this angle where he kidnapped my dad. We filmed this thing where he kidnapped my father. It's like how is Kid Lat, who's known for just being a happy, smiley guy, how does he react to the graveness of a situation like that? Uh, so I mean, there's a lot of stuff built in to being a superhero character. Um, a lot of it, which is sort of cinematic superhero cliches that you could sort of explore in a wrestling context. And I think that that's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it because there's so many ways it could go. I mean, throwing it, just having fun here.
Yeah,
Like, if you look at Robin, for instance, Robin can go one of a couple ways. He can go and be Nightwing when he gets older, and who's kind of like he's still Nightwing kind of mirrors Batman in a way, and then you could go the Red Hood route, or maybe he goes dark, and then there's so many like other avenues it could go because like even wrestling, you look at the Hurricane, and then without the mask, he's Greg Helms.
right.
So like, there's so many. I think that's the interesting part, and you're so young. I believe 20 years old.
That's right.
So like, who knows how long you stay Kid Lat, what it turns into. And then you could look at other characters in the wrestling space. Like, we just recently saw the return of Warhorse.
Right.
And Warhorse was this larger than life character, turns into the nihilist,
Yeah.
and is the most hated man in independent wrestling. And then he just made his return back to Warhorse. So there's always like, there's so many caveats to where the story can go. And I think that was, for me as a consumer, getting you on here, that was the most interesting part, is seeing where you think the opportunities could go. And it seems like you're leaving open all possibilities, which is the best part about wrestling.
Absolutely.
I want to ask, and I asked the same question to Adonis when I had him on. What was it like for the two of you to go on from like kind of talked a little bit about earlier? You train together, you learn together, you grow together, but then ultimately being able to win multiple tag team titles together, whether it was in Wrestle League, Frontline Pro. Like, what was that experience like? And just kind of walk us through what those reigns together meant to you.
Yeah, for Wrestle League specifically, um, we've the our journey to the Wrestle League tag titles was an interesting one, sort of because it was sort of ailed by real life circumstances at the time. About a year and a month ago, it happened in November of 24. We won the titles initially in a 3v3 elimination tables match. It was us and our friend at the time, Hijo del Enigma from Espiritu Pro from Puerto Rico, versus Quinn Whittick, Joey Dalton, also known as Stephen Flo, and Quinn Whittick's brother Christian. Um, and we ended up, winning the match, but through purely my own fault, I sustained an injury during the match in which I suffered a broken arm. So, despite the fact that we had the titles, we sort of had to put that on pause to give time for my recovery there. Um, but eventually we'd work back to that, and that sort of made the moment of winning the Wrestle League titles again that much sweeter. And then shortly after that, we worked towards the Frontline tag titles, and that on its own, that's a run that I'm pretty proud of because not only was I able to do it with Adonis, but it was sort of the first time where at Frontline I could really put the superhero stuff to the forefront with him, because as I mentioned previously, I been working with Josh Price for so long, and we were sort of doing like a big guy, little guy, best friends sort of thing. So I was still Kid Lat, I was still a superhero, but that aspects to the character, uh, though they were present, sort of took a back seat to the whole like friendship stuff with Josh. With Adonis, it's like you know we're both able to really just be like the superhero Wonder Twins sort of team that I think we were always trying to sort of go for. So I'm really happy with that run because it was sort of letting us off the leash a little bit.
Definitely. You spoke about breaking your arm.
Yeah,
Obviously, you come out of off the high of being in that moment, and then you get the bad news that your arm's broke.
right.
Um, what does that do to you mentally in that moment? And what were some of the things that you did to overcome that circumstance?
It was definitely not, a rather dark time, to say the least. What was supposed to be a great night followed by a great run that we had been waiting for and working towards, sort of stifled, and in all honesty, because of my own. Especially from my perspective, it was my fault, and I just remember um, that night, I was crushed. We ended up, getting in an ambulance and going to the hospital. Shout out my good friend Shaq Jordan, um, who he was the one who really calmed me down in the ambulance and was like, "Hey, you know, it's gonna be tough, but we're gonna get to right back where we are eventually. You're gonna come back and you're gonna work towards where we are again." But it was crushing because one for me, I love wrestling, and spending any time away for it from any reason, even for my own health, is obviously a hard thing to do. But also, for Adonis, it was tough because it was again a moment we were working so hard towards, and he also did a great job of keeping me calm down and assured, and knowing that we'd get back out there. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was just the months preceding were also a really tough thing. Eventually it just became a thing where it's like, man, I don't even care that my arm is broken. I really want to get out there. But you just have to sit tight, spend a little more time watching tape, watching other people work, take a back seat, and your time when you're healthy again will come. And then that following March, it was for Frontline, where I eventually was able to make my return there, and it was a great moment. Yeah, I mean, it sucks that it happened, but in a way, it gave me a good perspective on things. So.
Definitely. Speaking of moments, what so far in your career has been your most proud match or moment?
Um, on the match side of that question, recently I worked a singles with my friend Shaq Jordan, as I just mentioned, down at ARW Pro down in Indiana. Um, and um, it was it was a normal singles match. It was sort of like a baby sort of thing, and we I was just really proud of the way that worked, because I've known Shaq for a long time, and I've worked him in tag action, but that was the first time I was able to work him in singles. And for anybody out there who's familiar with the work of Shaq Jordan, he's incredible work rate, workhorse sort of guy, and being able to finally work as singles with a guy like that who I've looked up to, and it's sort of just coming out so smoothly, for no better reason than honestly that it's become one of my favorite matches that I'll look back on. And I think for the ARW Pro fan voting for awards this year, you could vote for that for match of the year, which I strongly recommend. um, But yeah, I mean that for the match side of things. I mean, there's countless other matches that I loved, especially for the moments. But in terms of the actual in ring work there, I think it was hard to top that. For moments though, it was actually in the midst of the months where I broke my arm. Uh, at Frontline, I referenced it a couple of times that where I was working with this guy called Josh Price, the wrecker out from Minnesota, uh, who he's the guy behind Destination Pro as well. But he had made his return to Frontline, where previously he'd been a major, like, top of the card heel, but he suffered a neck injury a couple years back and had to briefly retire and then come back to wrestling. And when he came back as sort of a beloved hero because people were excited about his return. Eventually, Frontline did this thing where they did a tag team randomizer tournament where I was paired up with Josh Price, which was a wonderful opportunity. And when that happened, all I was focused on was just becoming Josh Price's best friend. And we eventually had this tag team title run, which then spiraled into him getting a singles run for the Frontline Pro World title. I would eventually, that was around the time I broke my arm initially there. So I was sort of sidelined, but Ben McCoy, the mind behind Frontline, uh, found ways to sort of keep me in the story. And in the apex of the story, when it happened, I was the one who was able to. It was Josh Price versus Ben McCoy for the world title at Frontline, and they had me do a thing where I sort of hid under the ring. And then when Ben McCoy and his group at the time, the Rapture, tried to cheat Josh out of it, I'd come up from under the ring and hit Ben, win the Frontline world title, and that would cost him the victory over Josh, and Josh would get his world title back. And I just remember being in the middle of that ring there with my arm in a sling, obviously still hurt, but I was still able to be kept in the story at Frontline and be a major part of Josh Price finishing his story, having sort of his Cody Rhodes moment there. And it's actually Steve Arendt, who he mentioned before. Uh, it was his commentary of the moment. Him just shouting, "We won!" He shouted like he made that call and commentated that match. It made it feel like a big moment for me. Uh, but again, it's just these moments with Frontline that keep coming up. The reason why I'm so thankful for being there and why I stuck around was because Ben has been so great to me and giving me opportunities in my career, even when I've been sidelined. So
I like how they, for one, made everything full circle, but also was able to, even when you were down and injured, to be able to keep you as a main part of the show and the story, which you find a lot in independent wrestling's tough to do. But it seems like Frontline capitalized on a situation, made the best of it. So props to them, you, and everybody involved for sure.
for sure, thank you.
Couple more questions, and I'll let you go. One that I always find is fun, especially for younger guests, is when we start talking about dream matches. You know, a couple years ago, Cody made a list when he went out on the independent scene, and he chipped off quite a bit of it. Do you have, whether it's one or whether it's a list, do you have any dream matches that you want to try to chip away at?
One idea that has sort of been in my head lately. I worked so I do work for Mondo Lucha out in Milwaukee, and they bring in a lot of big names. So I've been able to share the locker room with guys like Speedball and guys like Warhorse and uh, guys like that. But mainly, I was able to work a 6-man tag, which involved the Iron Demon Shane Mercer,
Hmm.
which was cool because I was we had this moment where he sort of gorilla pressed me into the crowd and into the sea of people, which was crazy and was great for my Instagram mainly is why I loved that. And I was able to take his moonsault and battery, but it was a 6-man tag and I got a lot of in ring time with him. But in a perfect world, maybe if I'm ever put in the opportunity to work a singles with a guy like Shane Mercer, I think that'd be just so fun to do. Because uh, honestly, one of my favorite parts of the business, and something that has been very beneficial to me on the social media end of wrestling is being able to just take crazy bumps is a big thing that I just love to do. And a guy like Shane Mercer, he has so many ways of delivering those moments.
Yep.
Uh, One day, if I'm ever able to work him in a singles, that would be awesome. And I'd love to do that and get a bunch of clips for my Instagram again. Mainly, it would be awesome.
I like it. Last question. We are at the very beginning of 2026. Where does Kid Lat want to be at the end of it, goal wise?
Um, I think the main goal for 26 for Kid Lat is to be as far as possible, as many places as possible. So I want to acquire miles this year like I've never done before. I want to be in places I never thought I'd be, mainly geographically. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah, I would like to get out there internationally a lot more. Is definitely absolutely the main goal, top priority on the list. And again, I can't speak too much on the plans there, but I'm definitely looking forward to 2026 and the opportunities that it's going to bring. So,
Absolutely. I think this was a good way to send out a little teaser, a little feeler for what Kid Lat's got in store, and maybe a little glimpse into the past to see what you've already done. Um, just in case they may have missed at the beginning of the program, do you want to shout out your social medias one more time so they can go check out all the past and see what you might have to come in the future?
Absolutely, I would love to shout that out again. Kid Lat Boy Wonder on Instagram, underscores between every word. Same on TikTok. You can find me also on Facebook at Joe Win and also the Kid Lat Boy Wonder page. But mainly, above all else, please follow my Instagram.
Perfect. Kid Lat, thank you so much. I kind of teased this a little bit with Adonis when I had him on. We'll have to do a Thunder and Lightning
Oh,
episode, both of you, get you both on here. Maybe maybe I'll don a cape. Maybe we can have some fun with it.
oh yeah, yeah, that'd be great.
We
You
might be able to make things interesting. But
absolutely love to
as
have
I
you in the cape and mask as well, Justin.
it could be interesting. I'm a fan of throwing things out there. So maybe we'll see. We'll have to cook something up, as the kids say these days. Um, but I always leave the door open. So for part two, whether that's with your tag partner or without, I'd love to have you for another one.
Awesome, great, sounds great.